Hello everyone, my name is Jose Avalos, aka Dr. Logic8.
And this is Quinn Johnson, aka Quinjitsu.
And in today's tutorial, we will teach you how to use cameras in Disney Infinity 3.0. Well, the usual third-person camera that we see in here, this view, is usually well suited for most toy boxes, but sometimes you want to have just that particular angle from your toy box because you know that's how it's gonna play better, or you want to make a cool cutscene that shows you something else, and this regular camera is not gonna help you for doing that. So we're actually gonna show in this video the different camera modes that are on the toy box, and then how you can connect them or configure them and make logic connections from them. So let's get started. For this, we have to go to the Creativity Toys category. And there are 4 main cameras you can use in the game. There's the sidestep camera, which is more for like a 2D platformer perspective, not unlike the one used on the Inside Out playset. Then we have the bird's eye camera, which is more of a top-down perspective. Then we have the angle camera, which is more an isometric perspective, like the one used on the Toy Box Takeover expansion game. And finally, we have the target camera, which will go onto any actor that you tell it to. So it can follow players, or it can even follow something else in case that you want to make a cutscene. So now we're going to place 4 action buttons so we can actually show you the angles or how the cameras work on each of these. So we're going to place 1 for the sidestep, 1 for the one for the top down, 1 for the angled, and 1 for the target. So the way that we're gonna do that, in the case to activate a camera, is just as simple as making a logic connection from an action button, like pressed, and then all you need to do is select the sidestep camera and select activate, or it can be deactivate as well, in case that once you're done, using this angle, you can turn off the camera so you can go back to the regular angles shown in the game. But for now, we'll just go with activate. These options are the same for all 4 cameras that are in the game.
And you can also attach logic to the cameras themselves, so you're like, when the camera is deactivated, make this other thing happen, and so forth.
In fact, we'll actually later do some logic connections that make sure of that.
Cool.
So now you can see we activated the sidestep camera, and we can see that we see Mickey like, in a classic 2D platformer perspective.
So what happens if you run toward the camera like this?
The camera is gonna fall back because by default it's set to follow the player.
And it basically looks like it's giving you the distance. You're as far from the camera as the camera was from you originally, so no matter where you run around, it's always going to be that far from you.
Yeah, but if you actually want to say, hey, get actually closer to the player, we will move the camera so it's actually closer to the place where it's activated at first, and now you will see that it's actually way closer.
I like that glow-through effect too.
Yeah, that's one of the options we will see later in the properties of the cameras themselves.
Cool.
So that's it for the sidestep camera. Now we will actually activate the bird's eye camera. So same thing, new logic connection pressed, and we will activate the bird's eye camera.
And so it looks like it's right above you because you're the person that activated it. So
yes.
Even if the camera wasn't positioned right above you when you started.
Yeah, so if you actually wanted more pull back, like, give you a more distance of the field, instead of the horizontal distance to the player, it's actually the vertical distance. So for example, if I place this camera higher, you will see that it's a little bit more pull back.
Cool. And I really like using the top-down or the bird's eye camera for certain platforming sections as well. It kind of adds some variety to the whole thing.
Oh yeah, totally. Especially good, for example, if you want to do mazes. The bird's eye camera is particularly useful. Now let's actually activate the angle camera. So now we have that nice little isometric perspective, not unlike the one shown on the Toy Box Takeover game. So this is also particularly useful in case that you want to have, throwback games, or if you have a particularly tight area that you really need to show as much as you can from a particular angle. The angled camera is quite nice. And now let's actually activate the target camera. The target camera will take the distance and the angle. So now it's more of a different angle that is not a default one. So you can set it up like however extravagant angle you want it to be.
Yeah, the target camera is very, very flexible. It really has a lot of different abilities and properties that you can set to kind of... That's one that you can do all sorts of things with.
Yeah, and in fact, for the rest of this tutorial, we will actually focus on the target camera, and that's because the properties and the logic connections you can do for the other cameras are exactly the same as for the other 3 cameras. So basically, learn one, learn all 4 of them. So let's actually see how we can configure this camera. So for that, we will go to the properties, and we have all this stuff, which can be a little bit confusing, but we will go over these one by one. So let's start first with start transition. Start transition is how you want to change from the regular game camera to the target camera itself. Cut basically means that it will just show it automatically. But if we do it with a fade, it will actually be a fade to black, and then when you go back, it will be the target camera active. And swing, it will move from the position actually of the player, make a fast movement to the target camera itself. So we will actually show both of them in action. So for that, we will say start transition, we will put a fade on it. And the ending transition, when you go back from the target camera to the regular camera, we will put a swing. Those are the transitions. Now we have use defined duration. This means that if we set this one on, the camera will be active the amount of seconds that you specify on the display duration property. So for example, 10, it's going to be active for 10 seconds, and then automatically it will finish. So for example, let's take a look at 5. If it's off, you actually have to turn off the camera manually, or the player has to manually cancel it.
Yeah, otherwise you'll stay in that camera angle that you specified indefinitely.
Exactly. So, and now camera type, we'll mess with that later. But actually, let's test now the transitions. So now, if I press the button, we made a fade to black.
Very nice.
It's going to be active for 5 seconds, and then move back to the player. So that's the swing transition.
It's very cool. I really like using the fade. You know, the fade is really nice for certain just soft transitions between things, and the swing is really good too for especially if for all sorts of things, but also for like say you want to say like a door opens, like you hit a button and a door opens, and you want to switch to the target camera to show where that door is, you know, as compared to where you are. Then it'll swing back and forth, and you kind of get an idea of where things are positioned. Yeah,
so that's actually really useful property. So for now, let's just go back to cut, only for, you know, simplicity purposes. And now I'll also use the use defined duration off. Now camera type is basically how you want the camera to actually act. So we have 3 values for it. Follow, it will follow whatever target you set it to. That's the default we've been using so far. So you have seen that we've moved, but the camera is still following us. Stationary, it will look at where the target is, and the camera will stay there. It will not move at all. And focus, focus is similar to follow, but with the difference that focus will try to keep the target at the center of the screen at all times. Whereas in the follow, that's not necessarily the case. So let's actually test stationary and focus. So we'll set it to stationary. And you will see that the camera stays in that place. So I can enter or exit the camera view. This is particularly good in case that you want to do like establishing shots of, hey, this is the area that you have at the beginning of a level. So that's a stationary, and now let's actually do focus. So now we will go to properties, camera type, and let's say focus. So now I'm in the center of the camera, and it's trying to keep me as much as it can at the center of the screen itself.
No matter how far away you get from the camera.
No matter how far you get away from the camera, the position in this case of Mickey is at the center of the screen itself.
That's cool.
So that's what focus actually is. Now, let's say we will put this back again to follow, just because it is for simplicity's sake. And then we have this option that is called player viewport. Viewport is just a technical term for who is affected by this. So if you want, for example, you have more than one player playing this map, and you only want the camera transition to affect one player, this is the option that you need to settle. So by default, it's called triggering player. Triggering player is the player who calls the transition for the camera, which in this case I did by pushing the action button. If you want all players to be affected, this is the option that you need to set, all players. And then you can specify either only player 1 is going to be able to see this, player 2, 3, and 4.
So basically, if you say player all players, and
Yeah.
then you click it, then suddenly everybody will be in the view of that camera.
No, not everybody will be on the view of that camera, but that change of camera will affect all the players. So all the players are going to change from the default camera in the game to the target camera view.
Okay, that's yeah.
Yeah, because then there's another property called camera target that will tell, okay, who do you want to follow?
Okay, I gotcha.
Yeah, but for now, and we have finally this option called local players shared viewport, or all players. And this is actually a new option in this camera that is actually really cool, because if you remember playing split screen, the camera divides itself vertically in a regular split screen game. But if you have this option, you can actually have both players on the same camera. Like, for example, on the Inside Out playset, that thing happens all the time, where instead of the regular vertical split screen, they are both on the same screen at the same time. So if you want that kind of view on your toy box, this is the option you need. And local players means that only players that are playing, on the same box, offline, playing split screen, they're going to be affected by it. But if you want all the players, even if they are online, you want to set it to all players shared viewport.
Cool.
So yeah, that's an exciting one. The glow through camera is that little green glow that we already seen, like when I hide behind the buttons. So it's usually best to leave it on, because otherwise you might not know where the player's at.
So if you run behind a wall, or like, I believe it affects enemies too, right? Like if an enemy is running behind a wall that's between you and between the camera and it, then you'll still see the glowing outline of that person.
Yeah, so it's a good option for like knowing where things are. So glow through, it's really, really useful. And this is the property you were talking about before.
Okay.
The camera target is who do you want this to focus on? Now, the default option is all. So if more than one player is on the map, the camera will try to focus on all the players. It might not happen if the players are too far away, but it will try. But then we also have the triggering actor, which in this case would only be Mickey. And this is another cool one, connected locator. We can say connected locator or connected actor. This is in the case that you want to make a cutscene that is not necessarily focused on the player, in case that you want to aim somewhere else. In fact, why don't we show that right away?
Yeah, cool.
All right, so we will select connected locator, but first we actually need to place a locator in here. So for that we go to the Creativity Toys category, and we will place one, I don't know where.
Let's look at that blue portal up the top there.
Yeah, this one?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, let's set it on this one right here, and now we will also put it up. And now what we need to do is select first the camera, and we may have to make a locator connection. Otherwise, if you set it, okay, look, the camera target is the locator, but you don't have a locator connection, the camera doesn't know where to aim. So we need to make a locator connection as well.
So basically you want to make sure you do the entire process and not just half of it.
Yes. So now we select the locator now, and we select camera target. And that will tell the camera, hey, aim at this part. And now let's actually test it. Whoa! Well, it's looking upside down, but that's because of the camera itself is aiming at the other direction. So what we will do, oh, I'm sorry, is actually we're gonna rotate it. And we're gonna aim it a little bit higher.
Nice.
And now the camera is looking correctly. So if you're going to be aiming at a locator, usually it's a good idea to also have the camera facing the locator itself. Or else you're going to have that situation where the camera is upside down.
And you'll note here that we can actually see the locator, but that's just because Mickey has his wand out. So if you put your wand away, then that locator will be invisible.
Yeah, which is exactly what I did right now. So I took it away, and now the camera is just set until it's an infinite. So also, if you want to do establishing shot of where things are, this is a good way of doing it. And we can actually also have the camera aim at actors. So for example, you will notice that we have this little Olaf townsperson who likes looking at that fence. So now what we will need to do in order to do that is... instead of locator connection, new actor connection.
So do we need to delete that locator?
No, the locator will stay fine. It's just that in the camera target, we will actually say instead of aiming at the locator, we're gonna say aim at the actor.
Okay.
So now we select Olaf and say camera target, and now also we need first to rotate the camera so it's actually closer or looking to where Olaf is. Otherwise, we're going to have that same upside down problem we had before. And we will also aim at the camera. And in the properties of it, instead of selecting connected locator in the camera target, we will actually go to connected actor.
So basically 2 steps when you're doing with a locator or an actor. Step 1 is in the properties, make the camera target the locator or the actor, and then step 2 is to actually make that connection to the actor or the locator.
Yeah, and that's actually a really important step because usually people just make one step, which is making the actor or the locator connection, and then they forget to configure the one, set it that as a target. So if you make that connection first, the locator connection, and still doesn't work, check the properties. Camera target, important. And now we saw that camera was actually aiming, looking at our friend Olaf in here.
So what happens if he's wandering around?
Oh, depends on the kind of camera that we're using. Right now the camera is called follow. So if it is follow, it's going to follow Olaf around the level. But if it's set to stationary, it will stay in there. So it's just like we set it up before in the camera type property.
Okay, so if you have it set to follow and you've connected it to Olaf as the actor, then no matter where he wanders around, the camera will follow him around and stay focused on him.
Exactly. So that's another property you have to take into account, camera type.
Now, does actor, I'm just curious, does actor also, can you do like enemies or like physics balls, or how does all that work?
Yeah, if there's an object that is called actor connection, so for example, let's actually place a car in here. Let's put a vehicle. Ground vehicle. Yeah, the blue Autopia car. It's fast to do that. The first thing we need to do is actually delete the actor connection we had in the camera.
Oh yeah, because right now it's still set to the Olaf.
Yeah. So now I need to select the option that says delete link on the bottom.
And it looks like right now, since you had it attached to Olaf still, that new actor connection option is just not there.
Yeah. Yeah, because the target camera can only focus on one actor. And now, instead of that, we will select the blue Autopia car, and we select camera target.
Cool.
And now, if we push the button, we will notice that now the camera is focused on the car itself.
So there's a ton of things that will basically, that the game will consider as an actor that you can try to attach it to. So
yeah, any toy that says new actor connection is actually going to be able to be aimed by the target camera. So that's cool. And now we have another new property in the camera that is actually zoom distance. And what does that mean? All these ones are completely new. Basically, the zoom is how pulled back the camera is from the target that you have selected to. So if we have used camera position to set zoom distance, we will check the actual distance that there is between between the camera itself and the target, and use that as a zoom. If not, if we have it off, then it will check this zoom distance. So the closer it is, so for example, if we try with 4, let's actually try it out. The camera will be located like really close to the, in this case, to our target, which is the car. But now, if we actually set this number real high, so for that, oh, my bad. I sometimes get confused with the controls. My bad. So in the properties, if we say zoom distance, and let's actually have a higher number, so it can go up to 100 units. These are meters. So let's actually try like 50. You will see that the camera is way back. And so right now it's about 50 meters between the camera and the car itself.
I can see my house from here.
Oh yeah, totally. So the higher that number is, the zoom distance property, the more pulled back it will be. And now let's actually try it, have it even higher. Come on, we can do this. I really want to see my house from here. 98 meters. Oh boy. Whoa. Yeah, now it's really pulled back. I always get confused. I'm sorry.
Well, you are using the keyboard, so.
Yeah, it's true. So that's what the zoom distance property is.
So again, sorry. So where it says use camera position to set zoom distance. Explain to me one more time what that is.
Yeah, sure. Basically, if we have it off, this will be the distance between the camera and the on the target. Okay. So from the target, it will say, okay, pull back 98 meters in this case, and then aim at the camera. But if we if we have it on, it will check where the camera is right now in the world. So it was the way that it worked before on 2.0, pretty much, where if you pull the camera back, you know, by moving it around, then it would have a more zoomed out view.
So you actually had to manually move the camera around to adjust your quote-unquote zoom, your distance.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, and the final property we will see in here, it's actually called the vertical offset. These offsets can help you move the camera wherever exactly you want it to be. So for example, if we have, say for example, vertical offset of -20, it will take the current position of the camera, because again, we're using the camera position to set zoom distance, and then it will move 20 units below where it is, and then we'll make the aiming of the actor and so on. So if you want to move the camera just a little bit, just to have the correct angle you want, these are the properties that you have. So vertical offset is up and down, whereas horizontal offset is actually to the right or left of the camera, not forward. It's always relative to where the camera is currently positioned in the world.
Because basically, like in 2.0, when you had the target camera, you had to manually move the camera around, and sometimes because it would just move in set units, it was hard to sometimes get the exact angle you wanted. So this is nice because you can kind of fine-tune it with the vertical and the horizontal offset.
Yeah, so for example, we will have set it to like 10, 12 units, because I actually want it to be a little bit higher from what it is. And if we activate it right now, our camera target is still, I changed it back to Olaf. But if I test it, you will notice that there isn't really much high above. And that's because the offset does not work with actor connections that you have. It will only work with locator connections and players. So, for example, if we set it now back to properties and we say camera target, we will test with the connected locator. And we actually test it. The camera is positioned much higher, and it's also, you know, back because we have the camera looking at the other side.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so that's because we're still looking at that locator at the other side of the stage. So now it moved up 12 units high because our camera was really close to the floor, and we have that little bit extra elevation So using these offsets, you can make the camera exactly the way you want it to be.
Cool.
And now Quinn mentioned beforehand in the tutorial that we can actually make logic connections to the camera whenever it gets activated or deactivated. So we will do exactly that. What we will do is that whenever the camera is activated, it plays a text, and then when the camera is deactivated, show another text.
Cool.
And then we also have a couple of new options as well whenever players enter the camera and exit the camera. So for that we will have it. Let's actually place the series of toys. So for the text, we're going to be using a text displayer, which should be around here. And then we will also have, in the gameplay toys category, we will have some fireworks and a party cannon. We're going to be using the fireworks for when the player exits the camera, and the party cannon for when the player enters it. So the connections we have are 4 in the camera. We have when the camera has been activated, when the camera has been deactivated, which we've seen over and over again, and we have whenever a player has exited the current screen that it's showing with the target camera.
Whoa,
now,
that's cool.
this connection also also exists for all the other cameras as well. So it's not just the target camera, but also the angle camera and so on. So, and also thing when the player enters the screen view, and we can select what player it is.
So basically that means like if you have the camera's property as, or style as stationary,
Yep.
and then the player runs off the screen, that's considered exited screen view,
Yeah.
and then if they run back on, that's entered.
Yeah, that's
Wow, that's so
exactly
cool.
the thing we're going to show. So let's go first with activated, and we will show a text that will say, you know, a greeting. Or you know what? No, let's go with another one. So for example, we'll say, start. Let's go! Once the camera has been activated. Now, once the camera has been deactivated, we will show another text, which is more like stop. And we will say, okay, stop. And now what we will do is new logic connection. Once the player has entered the screen, which you can select any player, this will be for all players in the map. You can select a specific player as well, or a specific team.
Cool.
So in this case, we'll use it any player. So whenever the player has entered the camera,
Or exited. I think
exited.
exited is first.
I'm sorry. Yeah, we will select the flower and blue.
Wow, that's so cool.
And finally, we'll have it so that, yeah, when the player has entered the screen view, in this case also can be any player, we will shoot some fireworks. So what should happen now is that I push the button, and since the player, in this case Mickey, will be out of the camera, because we are right now looking at that locator over there, it will say the greetings, like, you know, the start message, and then it will also play the fireworks that is this flower. Okay, so let's actually test it. So I enter the camera, and now if I exit it, it plays the flower, enter, exit, and we had the message before that was the start, but it also got pulled back by that other message that said, you know, hey, press this button to exit the camera view.
Oh,
So that's why it didn't show up at first, because by default it's set in the top position. But now if I exit the camera, it says stop. So that's exactly the way it works.
gotcha. So that default camera message that says you can push this to get out of the message, that can kind of
Yeah, it got pushed on
overpower
the
your text,
background.
I guess. Yeah,
Yeah.
interesting.
And now the final thing we're going to do is, right now we've only seen the camera move, either follow the target or it can be stationary. But we can also create a path that the camera will take in case that you want to make your sweeping cinematic, you know, showing the entire level. That's exactly the thing we're going to do right now. So, for that we need to go to the Creativity Toys category, and we will have to select a path creator. Let's say that we start from... Oh, shoot. Let's say we start from here, and let's actually place a camera that, you know, goes a little bit like this, and then, you know, kind of like this, and then goes even higher. Now, the thing we need to do actually is attach the camera to the path creator. But first we have to set a property in the path creator that says auto starts objects when connected. I'm gonna set it to off, so the camera doesn't start moving right away. This is just for convenience sake. You will see why in a second. And now what we need to do is actually make a connection between the camera and the path creator. So for that, we select the camera and we select new path connection. And now we will select the path creator and we say Toybox path. And now, well, since both of them were really close together, the camera seems to be in the same place, but now it's at the starting point of the path creator itself. So what we will do now is that when this camera is activated, we will move this camera alongside this path until it reaches the endpoint, which is that point right over there I'm aiming, and then make it stop.
So will it still be focused on Olaf or one of the locators?
It will be focused on the locator that is right here, this
okay,
one.
Gotcha.
And the locator can also move in its own path as well. So, but right now, just for time's sake, I'm just gonna do it with the camera. So for that, we will say that. So for that, we will select new logic connection, and once that's been activated, we will get to the path creator, which can be a little bit difficult to aim sometimes, but that's okay. Select connect, and we will say reset and play. Basically, put the camera back at its starting location and then start moving around. And now we need to select the final point in the spline, or in the path itself, and we will say new logic connection once the point has been reached by an object on the path. We will select the camera and we will deactivate it. So that way the camera will move on its own until it reaches the point, and then it will deactivate itself. And then finally, just for simplicity's sake, once the camera has been deactivated, we will also place the camera back at its starting point. So let's actually test it. Now you can see that the camera is moving, slowly following the path, and I'm solely showing the points because we have already have the one. It's focused on the camera, and then boom,
That's way
disappear. So now you can make your cutscenes look exactly the way you want them to be. Oh, so that is the cave that I need to go.
That's cool.
Yeah, and well, all the options that we have set with the target camera are also available with the angle camera, the bird's eye camera, and the side camera. The only difference is that all those three cameras can only focus on players, not particular like locators, targets, whatever.
And I just had a couple tips too, if that's okay.
Yeah, please go ahead.
One of the other things that's really cool is you can if you have multiple cameras doing different shots and you want to go from one camera to the other, it's as simple as saying, you know, this side camera, when it becomes deactivated, activate this camera.
Yeah, so why don't we try this? So once that camera has been deactivated, I will select the angle camera and I will activate it. Let's show it. So boom, we have our nice little cutscene, and that's because the player is still entering in and out of the camera view. It deactivates, and look at that. Now we're back into our familiar camera. So that's one way of, doing transitions between cameras.
Very cool.
Got any other tips, Quinn?
The only other tip that I had, just one thing that we noticed that was interesting, because with the camera, you know, it asks you, okay, what's going to be activating this camera?
Yep.
Right? Like which player? Like if you want player 1, 2, 3, or 4 to be the thing that activates this camera, right?
Mm-hmm.
So one thing that we figured out is that sometimes, like if you have an action button like you do there,
Yep.
sometimes it will get confused because the button can't tell if player 1, 2, 3, or 4 are the ones who are pushing the button to activate it.
Okay.
Whereas, say if you use the trigger area, you can say when entered by player 1, 2, 3, or 4, do this, and the game basically knows which player exactly is the one that's activating that logic, which will then.
Yeah, the way of activating that camera would be like, when we say new logic connection entered, and then we can select player.
Mm-hmm.
And then it can be any player, so it doesn't matter, or it can be player 1, 2, 3, or 4.
So just keep that in mind. Keep that in mind when you're setting up the logic that will activate the camera. Like the action button can't tell which player is the one that's pressing it, but stuff like trigger areas can. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, in fact, now I activated the camera by stepping into the trigger area itself.
Cool.
I'll finish up, and then we're back in the isometric camera because of the connection we had done before. And well, as you can see with cameras, you can do so much cool stuff with this. So this is something you really have to be experimenting on. And well, that's it for this tutorial. I hope you have enjoyed it, and if you have any questions, please let us know in the comments or in the forums. And well, thanks for watching.
See you guys later.